Hello everyone. Today we will discuss one of the story from the book The Many Worlds of Literature, and this story it is written by M. Attar Tahir. Tahir is a Pakistani poet, and in his story The Inspector of Schools, he presents a real and true picture of the condition of a village school. Now, this story it is about a school inspector who visits a school under his jurisdiction. Now, education is considered as an extravagance or a non essential thing in the poor countries. But the fact is that education is the only way in which a society as well as an individual can progress. Now, here in this story, the inspector of school, Tahir, he tells us about a school inspector and a school master. So, the school inspector, he is very dedicated and hardworking, and he is unhappy with the miserable state of the schools in the remote villages. But he is helpless, he cannot do anything. Now, here we see that the society it is indifferent to the education system on one hand, and on the other the government does not care about the urgent needs in the system. And amidst these conditions, the school inspector and the school teacher they are religiously committed to their duties. They both are hardworking. The inspector walks miles and miles to the interior parts of the remote villages in order to inspect schools, and the schoolmaster he works in very worse conditions. So we see that in a village the schoolmaster he runs the school and there is no school building, no teacher. He is the only teacher of the school and he teaches from class 1 to class 6 without any facilities. Now both the school inspector and the schoolmaster they are aware about the miserable state the schools are in, but both are helpless. The school inspector, he makes recommendations, but his recommendations are unheard, and both of them they know that this is the real state, and they want to bring about the change, but that change is not possible. So here we see that the inspector he reaches to the school to this village and he inquires about the school that he has to inspect. So he meets a villager and he inquires about the school, and from the villager he learns that the school is under the shisham tree. So along with the villager he moves towards the shisham tree, and uh, the villager he praises the schoolmaster while they are walking. He says about the schoolmaster that he is a very good man, and the school inspector he reflects on the miserable state in which the schools are in. So he is really depressed and tired of moving into these remote villages where his jeep couldn't go. So here we learn about the miserable condition of this school, as the writer writes, and the miserable state they were in also depressing. He should have gotten used to it after 3 years, but no, every school still hurt. The lack of supplies, the disinterestedness of the people, the easygoing student, the sponging masters, it was all too much. What could he do? So it is about the schoolmaster. That is it has been 3 years, and every time he visits a school, this is what he comes across: the lack of supplies, the disinterestedness of the people, the easygoing students, and at places the corrupt masters. But what he can do is just recommend, and every time he sends his recommendations, but his recommendations are put down by the planning and development department. Now, in search of the school, they move along and they cross the fields, the bumpy roads, etc., and they finally reach to the shisham tree, but they cannot find the master and his students there. So there is a small conversation between the villager and the school inspector. The villager says, "It was here, I am sure, at least before the plowing, so it might have shifted elsewhere. But the building, isn't there a building, a school building? No, Sahib, no building. The master carries the school with him." So, this is the real condition of a village school. There is no building, and the master keeps on moving from place to place, and he teaches his students under, sometimes under the shisham tree, sometimes in a sugarcane field. So Tahir, he portrays the pathetic condition of a school in a village. Then the villager, he inquires from another villager about the school, and uh, he informs that he saw the master and his students near the sugarcane field. So now the search for the sugarcane field starts, and the school inspector, who is very tired, he says to the villager that you go and look for the school, and he says, "Listen, you go and look, and when you find it, let me know." The inspector of schools said, mopping his brow. So the villager, he goes in search of the school, and soon he returns back, and he has finally found the schoolmaster and his students. And so now the inspector of schools, along with the villager, moves to the place where the master is with his students. So he crosses the sugarcane fields, and finally they reach to the place. So as soon as they reach to the place, the inspector sees that the master, he is taking the class, and he can here we come to know in what condition is the master actually teaching his students. So here, an old man, stick in hand, and sat cross-legged in a rickety chair in the center. The chair had been repaired several times, the joints reinforced with nail strips of iron, the back held in place with pieces of wood and nailed on the top of the original frame. The seat and back, once woven in rattan, were now nailed with odd slates of wood. The master stood up, his bare feet finding his juti. Class 10, the monitor commanded in English. All the students scrambled to their feet, dusting the lower fronts of their kurtas. The master, overcome by the presence of the inspector of schools, took some time to collect himself. He dusted the chair he had been presiding from with his shoulder cloth, and held the chair for the inspector of schools to sit. The peasant watched for a sign. The inspector of schools thanked him. He vanished. So this is the school, and now the inspector inquires from the master, what is he teaching to the students. So he's teaching Urdu and sums of English and writing. So the inspector of schools, in order to test the students, he asked one of the students to read from an Urdu book. So here the master intervenes, and he says, "Sir, the book is of fourth class, and he is from the second." So again, the inspector is shocked that here the master is teaching to students of many classes. So he inquires, "How many classes do you have here?" "Six, Sirji, class 1 to 6." So now the inspector of schools, he mm, begins to discern the segments, and now he asked one of the students from class 4 to read, and the students gets up and read, and his reading was clear and loud, not a mistake, not a stutter. It restored visibly the master's confidence. Another student from another class are asked to recite a poem. A student from sixth class read out a nursery poem, and then the now the inspector of schools is quite happy by the master here, because he feels that the standard he had seen was far above that of primary schools under his jurisdiction. The reputation of this schoolmaster was well deserved. Satisfied by the performance, the inspector of schools got up, the chair creaked, the master was visibly buoyed, that is, he was happy. Now, then the inspector of the school and the master, they have a little conversation, and the inspector of schools, he wants to know that why the master keeps on shifting his school from one place to another. Why cannot a room be hired? So the schoolmaster, he says that no one in the village is interested in providing a room, and because the villagers are not interested in having a school in the village. They feel that the children are wasting their time on studies, and they are having fun when they could easily help their parents in the fields, or in looking after the cattle. And here the inspector of schools, he comes to know through the master that Chaudhry Ali Muhammad is the who is the headman of the village. He is the only one who is kind to them, and Chaudhry believes that the education is very important, and but even he can't give a room to them or even a land. But he has given his field, and this field also has been cleared up by the master and the students themselves. So they cleared the field, and then that year the school, it was run under the shisham tree. So the schoolmaster here again makes a plea to the school inspector that if they could only get a room, just one room, and he says that even if that room is not possible, he says that if not a room, a plot of land, the boys and I could build it. It would take a whole season, Sergi, but we could do it. So they are willing, the schoolmaster is even willing to build the school building on his own, that is, along with the help of his students. He only needs a plot of land. But the inspector of schools, he remains silent. He cannot do anything, and the schoolmaster is so desperate. He says that even if they get a plot of land in the menial section, then also they would be quite happy, and they would take their school there. But this inspector of school remains silent. He knows that he can see that his this proposal stands rejected, because the government gave no land or building for a primary schools. The rule is that the locals must provide that, and a rule is a rule, and here the local people, they are not in favor of having a school in the village. So there was no good in in forwarding this recommendation, and now it was only a matter of one little plot. One little plot was that with what was required, and how many masters were as dedicated as he. Now the school inspector, he is really impressed by the schoolmaster, and he feels that the schoolmaster is very dedicated to the school, and he has inspected a lot of schools, and He finds that he found that many schoolmasters, they did not even really care, and this kind of thing had not made any difference to them. So, but again, he wants to help the schoolmaster, but he is helpless. And so he gets into his jeep, acknowledges the salute of the master, and then drives away. He could not meet the man's eyes. So, this is what the story reveals. It gives us the very um, pathetic picture of a school in a village. And although the schoolmaster is very much dedicated to his duty of providing education to the children of the village, but because of the conditions, um, his dream of building a school in the village seems to immaterialize. So, this is all about the story. We'll discuss some of the questions